Alright, what's up guys? Coop back with another video. I seriously think I'm going to start calling these videos paper cuts. One, because I do show off plasma cuts. That one's for another video. But also because this is all about paper. This is all about the bills that are being put through. For this video, we have this guy right here, which is one of our vinyl graphics that we're designing. So it's got the American flag with all sorts of rifles on it. And that's going to be the graphic for this video. So what we're looking at today, let's get into this. Let's go ahead and do our normal screen share. Da, 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 da. Get rid of that. So we're looking at H.R. 8. Now, this bill was actually passed in the House, and it's being considered in the Senate. This is the what they call the Bipartisan background checks bill. This is to require a background check for every firearm sale. So person to person, you name it, every firearm sale will have to have a background check. Now, when we get started in this, let's run over here. This is congress.gov, as you can see in the video. Let me expand it just a little bit. And a couple things I want to show you guys in this. When we're looking at bills on congress.gov, there's a bunch of different things that we can look at with these bills. So I'm trying to back up through because I was bouncing through a couple of things earlier. So when we're looking at this, we can go in and we can see every action that has been taken with a bill. We can see sponsors, co-sponsors, whole nine yards. One thing I want to show you here is there were 3 Republicans that actually signed on to this background check bill, even though we already have background checks. So that's just a little bit more information here. Let's bounce all the way back. Oh, that bounced me back too far. Alright, so let me just do away with that and we'll look through some stuff later. So this was the so-called bipartisan background check bill. They call it bipartisan because 3 worthless ass Republicans actually signed on to this bill. And yes, they're worthless. For that matter, most of the Republicans that we have in the House and the Senate are absolutely worthless. They spend more time trying to worry about bad publicity than they do about actually defending our natural rights. So that's there. All right, so let's get into this bill. This is H.R. 8. This is to require a background check for every sale. So if I sell a gun to one of my friends, we would have to go to an FFL. We would have to get a background check done. Now, my question to all of you while we're going through this is, how will the government know that I sold a gun to one of my friends? Or a complete stranger, for that matter? The only way they would know is if they knew the guns that I had and then were able to check to make sure that I had the same amount of guns periodically. So, let's look at this. Alright, firearms transfers. In general, section 922, because this doesn't have a whole lot of findings at the front like a lot of these bills do. So we get in here, we go to section 922, which is unlawful acts, which is what I have pulled up over here. They want to add this whole section at the bottom of 922. So let's go through this. Y'all bear with me. You know these bills are long and these videos can get long. So they want to add in all the way at the bottom of section 922, section AA, 1A, It shall be unlawful for any person who is not a licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, licensed dealer to transfer a firearm to any other person who is not so licensed unless a licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, or licensed dealer has first taken possession of the firearm for the purpose of complying with Section T. Section T is the background checks. Applied to any other product, any other item you can own, most people would think this is absolutely insane. Someone who understands firearms and understands firearms legislation knows this is absolutely insane. The anti-gun left and anti-gun Republicans, because there are a lot of Republicans who are not pro-Second Amendment whatsoever. They may say it, but the crap they vote for, it's absolutely not within the Second Amendment. They will vote to restrict our rights every chance they get. All right, so getting Section B here. Upon taking possession of a firearm under subparagraph A, which is that one up top, a licensee shall comply with all requirements of this chapter as if the licensee were transferring a firearm from the inventory of the licensee to the unlicensed transferee. That's a really big way of saying is once they take possession of the firearm, they have to do a background check and they have to treat it just like they were transferring something out of their own inventory. So the same requirements for them selling a gun out of their stock to you applies to them running the background check for a person-to-person sale. Section C here, or subparagraph C, again gets subparagraph A. If for some reason that the transfer is not going to go through, then the licensee can give the gun right back to the seller of the firearm without doing a background check to give it back to the person. So what's really freaking crazy here is if you were worried about illegal guns and illegal sales, a felon could literally go to an FFL with a gun and transfer the gun to another person without being background checked under this bill. And if for some reason the person decided that they didn't want the gun, the FFL could transfer it right back to that felon without doing a background check. Like a felon would ever go there in the first place and doing it. But that would be underneath, that would fit underneath this bill. All right. Let's see. Now, as always, when the government makes a law, they have to give themselves an out or a workaround or just a exclusion from the law. So they do this here. This shall not apply to law enforcement agency or any law enforcement officer, armed private security professional, member of the armed forces, to the extent the officer, professional, or member is acting within the course of their official duties.
Dad, I
Go,
have a
monkey.
video that I have to show you.
All right, well, go. I'm sorry, my daughter's. Go. I'll show you. You show me in a minute. Go.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's see. Let's see. Now, this is where they get into exceptions for basically family members. So this section or that section shall not apply to a transfer or exchange, which the purpose of this subsection, an in-kind transfer of a firearm of the same type of value. So we could trade if they were the same type, same value firearms. Now that again is going to be left up to the government to decide. So if they were basically a 50-cent difference in between the two, then they would not fall underneath this. If you don't believe me, they will put you in jail for having a barrel length that is a 1/4 inch under or a 15 to 16th of an inch under. Yeah, they're going to do what they want to do. So bona fide loan, bona fide gift in between spouses, between domestic partners, between parents and their children, including step-parents, stepchildren, between siblings, between aunts, uncles, the nieces and nephews, or between grandparents and grandchildren. And this is where we get into another section here. If the transferor has no reason to believe the transferee will use or intends to use the firearm in a crime or is prohibited from possessing firearms under state or federal law. Now, that could be as simple as that niece, nephew, uncle, whoever likes to smoke a little weed every once in a while. Well, that would make them a prohibited possessor, which means you just committed a crime. Even if you didn't know it, I mean, you should have had reason to know, according to them. Shall not apply to a transfer or executor, administrator, trustee, or personal representative of an estate or a trust that occurs by operation of law upon the death of another person. So, say your uncle dies, leave you some guns. They transfer him over to this executor. That executor would not have to have a background check done. Now, if he transferred those guns to someone not covered underneath this, a friend of your uncle or something like that, then background checks would have to be done. So a temporary transfer to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm, including harm to self, family, household members, or others, if the possession by the transferee lasts only as long as immediately necessary to prevent the imminent death or great bodily harm, including self and harm, domestic violence, dating partner, sexual assault, stalking, domestic abuse. Most of what this is talking about is if someone's suicidal, they're having some sort of a crisis, then you could give those weapons to someone to hold on to. Now, the caveat to that is as long as immediately necessary to prevent yada yada yada. Now, again, this is where the government is going to gauge the time length that this would happen in. And if you have watched any sort of court proceedings for the past little while, if you have been paying attention to what the government's doing, they are going to judge that in a way that will certainly make you guilty of doing an illegal transfer. Before people tell me, oh, Coop, they wouldn't do that. Oh, the hell they wouldn't. It's the same way it's argued in court for trials that I've watched. Well, this person shot Full Metal Jackets. Well, Full Metal Jackets are capable of over-penetrating. They shouldn't have used them. And then in the very next trial, someone used hollow points. Well, they used hollow points because they were going to do so much more damage, and they knew they were going to. They're going to try to make you look guilty either way, no matter what you do. If you roll with a stock gun, then they will probably frame it as, well, you didn't care enough to update that gun to make it any safer. And if you do updates on the gun, sights, and stuff like that, then they're going to use that against you, saying that you wanted to be more lethal and you had planned on using this. Any way they can twist an argument, they're going to twist it. So, Section E, transfer that is approved by the Attorney General underneath the Internal Revenue Code 86. Shall not include a transfer, temporary transfer, if the transfer has no reason to believe that the transferee will use or intends to use the firearm in a crime or is prohibited from possessing firearms under state or federal law, and the transfer or the transfer takes place and the transferee's possession of the firearm is exclusively. So they're telling me, again, what I can do with my private property. And they're putting further limitations on what I can do with it. So it's Section I right here. I can loan a gun to my friend at the shooting range when we're standing right next to one another. Hey, we're target shooting. You shoot my gun, I shoot yours. Apparently the government says that's okay. Right there. While reasonably necessary for the purpose of hunting, trapping, pest control on a farm or fishing. These people act like the Second Amendment is somehow connected to hunting or target shooting. It's not. Those are other uses for weapons that we have, but that's not the Second Amendment. That's not in any of the state constitutions. While reasonably necessary for the purpose of hunting, trapping, pest control, farm, ranch, again has no reason to believe the transferee intends to use a firearm in a place where it is illegal. And it happens all the time. Someone may be hunting in an area that they don't realize they shouldn't be hunting in. They cross onto posted land somehow. Hunting in cases like where I've hunted a lot on military bases with my dad, since my dad's retired military, you could be hunting in an area that's closed that you didn't realize you'd crossed into, which would make that an illegal act. You have to have reason to believe the transferee will comply with all licensing permit requirements, yada, yada, yada. Now, what if I loan a gun to a buddy and he gets caught without a hunting license? I didn't know he didn't have a hunting license. He said he was going to go hunting. He needed a rifle because all he's got is a shotgun or something like that. So I loan him, or vice versa. He's got a deer rifle, doesn't have a duck gun. I loan him a gun. All of a sudden, I am a criminal because that person did something. All right. While in the presence of the transferor, so if I'm standing there holding someone's hand, I could actually let them borrow a gun. It shall be unlawful for a licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, licensed dealer to transfer possession of or title to a firearm to another person who is not so licensed unless the importer, manufacturer, or dealer has provided such other person with a notice of the prohibition under paragraph 1. So what this is saying is they're the licensed importer, licensed manufacturer. They're going to do a background check on me when I go buy a gun. And then they have to give me a copy of all this other BS telling me I don't have the right to sell my privately owned property unless I go through an FFL to do the transfer. And then Section 4 says the Attorney General shall make this available in Spanish and English versions. And let's see. So then we come over here. That's that whole big couple of paragraphs worth of crap that we just read. Of course, they give their carve-outs for themselves. Internal Revenue Code, we read through that. All right, so Section 924 should be this guy right here. So in Section 924, by striking S and T and then adding in S, T, and AA, so they went from the normal S and T subparagraphs that they had in there in the first place, and they added in AA, that whole thing about the control on background checks and having to run them on everybody. Shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. So I think they can go up to like a $250,000 fine on this, and they can put you in jail for up to a year because you sold a legal product to someone else. Friend, dude you met off the street, someone you didn't know was going to commit a crime. You just didn't go to the government and get their little background check run to sell your private property. So you get to go to prison and you get to pay the government money. Now understand, guys, remember this was passed in the House of Representatives. March 11th, 2021 was when this was passed. This bill was actually came out in January. This was another one of the January rush bills that they did, where they were just shooting bill after bill after bill after bill. Oh, they're still doing. They just slowed down a little bit. Thank God. It's just another thing, man. How will they? You have to ask the rational questions. How will they know, or how would they possibly know, if I sold a firearm to another person without doing the check. The only way they can possibly know that is if they know the guns that I have and they're able to track all the guns that I, as a private citizen, own. Now, it says in this one part, that this is not authorized or constructed to establish directly or indirectly a national firearms registry, which is horse crap. Because if they don't have a registry, there's no way they can enforce this. No way whatsoever that they can enforce this without a registry and without being able to check that registry constantly to see whether or not I have sold one of my firearms. So that's that one, kids. We're going to move on to another one. Y'all be cool, and I am out.